mate." The black woman stepped into the courthouse like it was any ordinary morning. Officers Tyler Grady and Mason Klein thought they'd found an easy target, someone to bully, cuff, and control for sport. With sneers and borrowed authority, they dragged her down a back corridor, wrists cinched tight, voices dripping with contempt. They didn't see a judge. They saw a body they assumed couldn't fight back. To them, it was routine, cruel, casual, protected by a system that always cleaned up their messes. But arrogance blurs vision. The woman they violated was the presiding judge in their separate misconduct hearing. Morning light stretched across Judge Naomi Hayes's bedroom as she faced her mirror, smoothing a silk blouse with practiced precision. Today wasn't routine. It was the final day of preparation for a critical police misconduct hearing. She paused, steadying her breath, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle into her chest. She'd learned to carry that weight with grace, especially as a black woman who'd had to earn every inch of respect. She chose a charcoal gray pantsuit, sharp, quiet power without the robe. She checked her briefcase twice, confirming every document. Her badge sat in leather, symbolizing a 22-year climb through a system that resisted her presence. Autumn air hit her face as she stepped outside. Naomi preferred walking, time to organize her thoughts, time to focus. Her heels clicked in a steady rhythm, matching a heartbeat that felt calm on the surface, determined underneath. The courthouse rose ahead, limestone columns, promises carved into stone. It looked like justice, but Naomi knew how often justice was only theater. Lawyers, clerks, defendants formed familiar lines at security. Deputy Wade Jennings stood behind the metal detector, expression set in habitual disdain. His eyes narrowed as Naomi approached. She'd endured his subtle antagonism for years. Extra searches, slower lines, smug little power trips. "Morning," Naomi said evenly, placing her briefcase on the conveyor belt. The detector beeped, always did, thanks to underwire. Jennings' mouth twisted. "Step aside for additional screening." Satisfaction colored every syllable. Before she could respond, two patrol officers slid in like shadows. Grady's bulk blocked her path while Klein circled, smooth and deliberate. "Ma'am, you need to come with us," Klein said, professionally cold. "You match a description," he added. Naomi kept her face composed, though her pulse sharpened. "There's a mistake. I'm Judge Hayes." She reached for her badge case, but Grady snatched it away, scoffing loudly. "Sure you are," Grady mocked. "And I'm the Chief Justice." Klein inspected the badge with theatrical suspicion. "Fake," he declared. A small crowd formed, regulars who recognized Naomi, yet feared speaking up. A young clerk stepped forward, then froze under Grady's glare and retreated. Naomi's voice stayed firm. "This is unnecessary. My ID is in my briefcase." Grady barked, "Hands behind your back, now!" Naomi's heart pounded, but she didn't flinch. "I will not. I'm a federal judge. You are making a serious mistake." Klein moved behind her. Grady seized her wrist. Cold cuffs bit down as humiliation surged, hot. "Look at her, acting important," Grady called out for the onlookers. "Thought that fancy suit would fool everyone?" Jennings watched, smiling faintly, making no move to intervene. The spectacle pleased him. Naomi's briefcase sat abandoned on the belt as they marched her into a back corridor. Her heels scraped awkwardly under pressure as staff pressed to walls, ducking behind corners, eyes full of recognition, fear, and shame. No one helped. Footsteps echoed off marble like a broken drumbeat. "Time to teach you respect," Klein murmured close to her ear as they reached a door marked "Security Personnel Only." Naomi held her head high. She cataloged details: faces, angles, hallway cameras, the timing of footsteps. She'd learned long ago that survival sometimes meant memory, and memory could become evidence. The door shut behind them with a final click. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. The room was small, bare concrete, stale coffee, cheap cleanser. A bolted metal chair sat center like a warning. "Have a seat, Your Honor," Grady sneered, shoving her toward the chair. Naomi kept her balance, refusing the stumble he wanted. Jennings leaned by the door, arms crossed, enjoying the power imbalance. Klein circled like a predator, footsteps slow, controlled. The room felt smaller every second. Grady leaned close, breath sour. "Been wanting to meet you," he said. "Heard you love policing us from the bench." Naomi met his stare. "I know enough law to recognize violations happening right now." Klein's hands clamped her shoulders, forcing her down. "Still talking like a judge," he muttered. "We'll fix that." Grady opened a cabinet drawer. Metal scraped. He turned, holding electric clippers, cord dangling like a whip. "You know what they do in prison?" He plugged them in. The hum filled the room like a threat. "They take what makes you feel special," Grady said, grinning. "Clothes, jewelry, hair." Naomi's voice stayed steady. "This won't end well for you." Klein laughed. "Who'll believe you over 3 officers?" "Right, Deputy?" Klein asked. Jennings shifted, slightly uneasy, yet stayed silent. "Just don't leave marks," he finally muttered, more concerned about evidence than cruelty. Grady pressed clippers near Naomi's cheek. "Want to beg?" Grady taunted. Naomi stared forward, silence like stone. It angered him. The first pass carved a brutal line. Dark hair fell in clumps to the floor, scattering like dead leaves. Grady worked sloppily on purpose, leaving patches, jagged stripes, humiliation as craftsmanship. "Smile," Klein said, pulling out his phone, snapping photos. "This is going in my personal collection." "Delete that," Jennings warned, suddenly cautious. Klein scoffed, still filming. "Relax, just for us." Naomi breathed slow, measured, holding her body still while her dignity was tested, like a locked door. She thought of every victim who'd stood trembling in her courtroom, begging for someone powerful to care. Their faces steadied her. Each vicious buzz of clippers hardened her resolve into something colder than fear. Grady stepped back, laughing at the uneven remnants. "Not a courthouse appropriate now, is it?" Klein moved in, camera still rolling. "Yeah, any final wisdom from the bench?" Naomi's gaze made him shift uncomfortably. The silence bored Grady. He brushed hair off her shoulders roughly, every touch meant to degrade. "Maybe we give her a tattoo next," he joked. Jennings finally moved. "Enough. Get her out before trouble starts." Grady unclipped the cuffs with unnecessary force and tossed Naomi's badge onto the floor. It clattered among scattered hair. "Go tell your boss," Klein said, opening the door. "Tell them what happens when you cross us." Naomi stood slowly, steady, despite everything. She bent with deliberate grace, retrieved her badge, and slid it into her pocket. Hair clung to her jacket. She didn't brush it away. Not shame, not surrender. The hallway lights felt brighter against her exposed scalp. Her briefcase waited untouched on the conveyor belt, like the building itself pretended nothing happened. Naomi lifted it, movements precise, spine straight, eyes forward. She could feel them watching, hungry for her to break, to run, to cry. Instead, she walked toward the courtroom with measured purpose, leaving her tormentors behind. Today wasn't about humiliation. It was about record. The courtroom buzzed, packed with reporters and community activists. Sunlight poured through tall windows, cutting long shadows across polished wood. At the defense table, Grady and Klein sat smug, uniforms crisp, badges gleaming. "All rise," the clerk called. "United States District Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Naomi Hayes presiding." The heavy doors opened. A collective gasp swept the room as Naomi entered. Bald, marked, unbowed, red scrape marks burned across her scalp where clippers bit too deep. Patches and uneven lines were painfully visible. Naomi walked with calm precision, robe draped over her arm like a shield she refused to hide behind. At the defense table, smugness collapsed into terror as recognition hit. Color drained from both officers' faces. Their attorney leaned in, whispering frantically. Naomi climbed the steps, every movement controlled, every breath deliberate. She slipped on her robe with practiced ease and sat, presence filling the chamber. "Good morning," she said, voice clear. "Case 2023, CR 405, United States versus Officers Tyler Grady and Mason Klein. Civil rights violations, under color of law." Grady's leg bounced under the table. Klein stared ahead, jaw clenched so tight a muscle twitched. Their attorney scribbled wildly. Naomi looked at counsel. "Are both parties ready to proceed?" The prosecutor, a tall woman with steel gray hair, stood. "Ready for the United States, Your Honor." The defense attorney jumped up. "Immediate sidebar, Your Honor." Naomi's voice cut clean. "Denied." "Are you prepared to proceed?" the judge asked. The attorney stammered. "But, Your Honor, concerns." Naomi's gaze didn't soften. A simple yes or no. He swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor." "Noted. Sit." Naomi faced the jury. "You will hear testimony about a pattern of misconduct spanning years." The prosecutor opened a binder. "The United States calls Rosa Delgado." A small woman in her 60s approached, hands trembling. Rosa described Grady and Klein beating her teenage son during a traffic stop, then falsifying reports to claim resistance. Naomi ruled on objections with precision, voice steady. Only subtle signs betrayed the sting, fingers brushing her raw scalp. Witnesses continued. A young black man choked unconscious. A shop owner describing surveillance footage that vanished after showing planted evidence. Each story layered another brick of truth. The officers shrank as the case against them solidified. Their arrogance evaporated, replaced by dread. They whispered constantly to their attorney, who looked near panic. Naomi glanced at the clock. "We'll recess for 1 hour," she announced, gavel cracking like a gunshot. "Court reconvenes at 1:30 p.m. Both officers flinched. The gallery erupted in chatter as Naomi stood. Reporters rushed out, phones already lifted. Activists clustered, voices thick with disbelief at the morning's cruel irony. "All rise," the clerk called, as Naomi descended, robe flowing behind her. She moved toward chambers, leaving Grady and Klein staring after her, men suddenly aware they'd stepped into a storm they couldn't outrun. In chambers, afternoon light sliced through blinds. Naomi sat behind her desk when her clerk, Jordan Lee, entered with 2 U.S. Marshals. "Deputy Jennings is here, Your Honor," Jordan said, concern tight in his voice. Jennings strode in with swagger, hand near his holster, smirk returning. "You wanted to see me, Judge?" Contempt coated his tone, the same contempt he wore while watching her humiliation earlier that day. Naomi didn't offer a chair. She opened a thick folder. "Deputy Jennings, I reviewed your complete personnel file, not the sanitized version you've curated." His smirk faltered. "My record is clean," he insisted. 29 years of service, Naomi corrected, and 29 years of documented harassment, profiling, and abuse, buried through connections. She read complaints aloud. March 2015, courthouse interpreter singled out, mocked, degraded. Jennings shifted, belt leather creaking. Routine security, Naomi continued. July 2017, attorney reporting black clients targeted while white defendants sailed through. Jennings muttered protocol, but the words sounded hollow in the room. Naomi read September 2019. A law student describing inappropriate comments, insinuations about diversity quotas. Jennings' face reddened. "Misunderstandings," he snapped. Naomi's eyes held fire. "There are 52 similar complaints. All disappeared," Naomi said. "All dismissed without investigation. Until now." Jordan stepped forward, placing a digital recorder on the desk. Naomi pressed play. Jennings's voice filled the room, ordering restraint, laughing, demanding evidence be erased. Jennings's hand twitched toward his holster. The marshals moved closer. Silent warning. Naomi stopped the recording. "Your badge, deputy," he sputtered. "You can't." Naomi's tone hardened. "Your badge now." "You are suspended effective immediately," she said. "Pending federal charges. Civil rights violations, conspiracy, obstruction." Rage twisted Jennings's face. A marshal warned, voice low and lethal. "Choose your next words carefully." With trembling fingers, Jennings unpinned his badge and threw it onto Naomi's desk. It skittered across years of buried reports, victims' voices finally forcing air into sealed files. Naomi didn't flinch. "Cuff him," she ordered. Handcuffs clicked, loud in the small office. As Jennings was let out, Jordan leaned in. "They won't take this quietly," he murmured. "The Union, the old guard, they'll come hard." Naomi touched her bare scalp, jaw set. "Let them," she said. "Every complaint, every cover-up, entered into official record. No more burying truth." Outside, whispers rose as Jennings was marched through corridors in chains, staff watching with shock and vindication. Naomi gathered her robe, preparing to return. Her scalp still stung, but the pain sharpened her clarity. She had sworn an oath. Personal cost didn't cancel duty, it tested it. Jordan held the door. "Afternoon session begins." Naomi nodded, squaring her shoulders. Armor wasn't metal. It was discipline. It was proof. It was choosing procedure over panic, record over rage, justice over comfort, even when the system tried to punish you for insisting. That night, Naomi sat alone at her kitchen table, pasta untouched, TV murmuring in blue light. She didn't turn on lamps. Darkness felt gentler after fluorescent cruelty. Breaking news flashed. Courthouse security deputy arrested on federal charges. Footage showed Jennings in cuffs, rage stamped across his face. Then the police union rep appeared, outrage manufactured. "Judicial abuse," he proclaimed. "Decorated officers railroaded by a judge who's lost objectivity." Naomi's fork clattered. She listened as talking heads piled on. Emotionally compromised, unstable, unfit. A younger voice pushed back. "What about the assault?" But others smirked. "Alleged." "Where's the evidence?" Naomi reached for her wineglass, hand steady, despite the heat in her chest. The pundits repeated the same question, like a spell. "Security footage? Witnesses?" Her phone buzzed. Jordan texted, "Turn on Channel 7. DA Dalton's moving." On screen, District Attorney Kenneth Dalton wore concern like a costume. "Hey, we must ensure judicial process remains untainted by personal vendettas," he said, straightening his tie. Naomi's window carried distant chanting, growing louder. She switched channels and peered through curtains. Two groups faced off on her lawn, supporters with signs demanding justice, opponents shouting, "Back the blue," and "Remove the biased judge." The split felt surgical, intentional. Another text from Jordan. "Dalton meets Chief Judge tomorrow. Sources say they'll try removing you." A police cruiser rolled past her home, spotlight sweeping the windows. Naomi didn't flinch. Fear was the reaction they expected. She muted the TV as it replayed the department's spin. Credible threats, routine screening, judge became combative. Her appetite vanished. The narrative was shifting, turning brutality into procedure, turning her into the problem. Naomi stood still, letting the lies wash over her like cold rain. She'd seen this tactic before. Deny, distort, isolate, exhaust. They didn't need truth to win. They only needed doubt to delay consequences. Wineglass in hand, Naomi went to the bathroom and flicked on harsh light. Her reflection stared back. Bare scalp, angry red patches, uneven lines. "Unstable," the pundits had said. "Vendetta," Dalton had implied. Naomi traced the rough cuts gently. They thought they could bury this, like they buried decades of complaints. They thought they could paint her as hysterical, break her with noise and threats. But her bare head wasn't shame. It was evidence, visible, undeniable, searing. Each scrape told the truth they wanted erased. Outside, chanting rose. Her phone buzzed with warnings, pressure, calls for removal. The TV silently replayed her bald entrance into court. Naomi leaned closer to the mirror, meeting her own gaze. She saw no victim, only resolve. "They won't break me," she whispered, not as prayer but as statement. The words felt as fixed as law carved in stone. Protesters could scream, unions could threaten, the DA could scheme. But the morning's mistake was fatal. They revealed themselves too clearly, their method, their confidence, their assumption of immunity. Now she would reveal herself too. Naomi touched her scalp again, then straightened her spine. In the mirror stood a judge, oath-bound, unshakable. "They won't break me," she repeated, stronger. Her reflection didn't comfort her. It challenged her to act. Next morning, sunlight spilled through her chamber's high windows. The cool air on her bare scalp still felt strange. Jordan paced, nervous energy in his steps, clutching a thick manila envelope. "Someone slid this under my door." He laid it on her desk, voice dropping. "No name, no note, but it's dynamite." Naomi opened it carefully. Inside, internal affairs reports, complaints, emails, records, years of misconduct documented and deliberately buried. Jordan pointed to highlights. Grady and Klein worked together 7 years. Every excessive force accusation, same names. Jennings at security, internal affairs bearing it, union reps blocking investigations. Naomi's fingers hovered over bruised photo evidence. "How many?" she asked quietly. 31 complaints in 7 years, Jordan replied, and these are only the ones that made official files. A knock at the door froze them both. Jordan's hand twitched toward hiding papers. Naomi raised a calm hand. "Enter." A man stepped inside, early 40s, plainclothes, detective badge at his belt, eyes tired from carrying secrets. He closed the door softly. "Detective Ethan Price," he introduced himself. Naomi nodded once. "My clerk stays." Price exhaled, relief visible. I've been waiting for someone to stand up, he admitted. When I saw what happened to you, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Naomi gestured to a chair. Price sat, hands clasped hard. I worked with Grady and Klein 3 years in narcotics, he began. I watched them plant evidence, falsify reports, rough up suspects, targeting people they thought were powerless. When I reported it, Jennings lost paperwork, Price said bitterly. When I pushed, my cases collapsed, evidence disappeared, witnesses recanted. Jordan slid a legal pad forward. We need specifics, he said. Dates, names, incidents. Price nodded. I kept records, notes, copies of original reports before edits. Some audio. I knew someday someone would need them. Naomi leaned in, voice gentle but firm. You know what you're risking. Union, department, retaliation. Price gave a tired laugh. They already started. My partner reassigned, overtime cut, kids' college fund bleeding. He met Naomi's eyes. Yesterday, my daughter asked why police hurt a judge. She's 12. What do I tell her? Naomi touched her scalp unconsciously. You don't have to do this, Price's voice strengthened. Yes, I do. You stood after what they did. If you can stand, I can stand. Jordan wrote fast as Price listed patterns and names. There's more, Price said, lowering his voice. The top is involved. Monthly meetings, chief judge, DA, union reps, deciding what to bury and who to protect. I have dates, locations. A sharp knock interrupted. A bailiff appeared. Your Honor, Chief Judge Bernard Mercer requests you immediately. Naomi rose, robes settling over her shoulders. She turned to Price. My clerk will take your full statement. We need everything documented, verified, duplicated. Allo. Price stood, determination replacing weariness. Whatever you need, Your Honor. Naomi nodded. Jordan, secure copies in multiple locations. Get courthouse surveillance logs for the last 6 months. All of them. She faced Price again. Absolutely sure? If you stand, I'll stand, Price repeated. Naomi tucked the envelope files into her briefcase. What began as a case against 2 officers had grown into something larger. The machinery that protected them, the officials who enabled it. She touched her scalp, rough patches still tender. They meant the clippers as humiliation. Instead, it became fuel, proof that power feared accountability. Jordan opened the door. Beyond it, corridors filled with men who believed they owned justice. Afternoon sun blazed through the courtroom windows as Detective Price took the stand. His hands trembled slightly while being sworn in, but his voice held. Naomi watched the gallery, other officers glaring at him with open hostility. The prosecutor began. How long did you work with Grady and Klein? 3 years, Price answered clear. 2020 to 2023. What patterns did you observe? Price's eyes flicked to the defense table. They had a system. They targeted minorities, protesters, anyone without resources, Price testified. They planted evidence, falsified reports, used excessive force. Murmurs rippled. Grady's face darkened. Specific examples? The prosecutor pressed. Price opened a notebook. March 15, 2021, he read. They arrested Darius Coleman, claiming cocaine in his car. I watched Grady plant it before the search. Gasps erupted. Internal Affairs, Lieutenant Mark Rourke buried the complaint, Price added. Rourke, seated in back, stood abruptly and left. Price continued. July 8, 2021. Leah Park, peaceful protester. They beat her in custody, then charged her with assault. Di Totman Buiwasa Baskawani Ya Aidimakelasmine. He named supervisors who ordered body cam footage deleted. Cover-ups went to the top, Price said. Monthly meetings, Chief Judge Mercer, D.A. Dalton, union reps, deciding which cases vanish. Grady exploded from his chair, rage spilling into the courtroom. "You lying piece of trash! You're dead!" Chaos erupted. Bailiffs rushed in as Grady lunged forward. Klein grabbed him back. Spectators shouted. Phones raised. Naomi's gavel cracked like thunder. "Order!" Her voice cut through panic like a blade. "Officer Grady, sit down or be removed and held in contempt." He struggled, spittle flying. Naomi's eyes turned ice. "Remove him," she ordered. "Add witness intimidation to his charges." Bailiffs dragged Grady out as he cursed. Price gripped the rail, staying composed. Klein stared with controlled hatred, whispering to his attorney. Naomi addressed Price directly. "Do you need a recess?" Price shook his head. "No, Your Honor. I need to finish this." The testimony continued. Documents entered into evidence, copies of original reports, dated notes, audio recordings. Defense objections grew desperate. When Naomi finally called recess, the gallery buzzed like a disturbed hive. Reporters rushed out, phones pressed to ears. Price was escorted under heavy security, face drawn but determined. Naomi gathered papers, watching Klein leave with his attorney, eyes cold, promising retribution without saying a word. Later, as sunset approached, Naomi walked to her car in the courthouse lot. The day's revelations echoed in her head. She noticed the change. Too late. Her car defaced in bright red paint, tires slashed, windows shattered. "Traitor!" screamed across the door in jagged letters. Acid had eaten through the paint. Naomi stood perfectly still, studying damage with clinical detachment. Cowardice written in vandalism. Escalation. A message meant to teach fear. Employees passing by gasped, offering sympathy, but Naomi barely heard. First her hair, now her car. They were moving from humiliation to destruction. An ordinary person might crumble. Naomi felt something sharper than fear. Certainty. She glanced at the red paint dripping like blood and understood the desperation behind it. People confident in their innocence don't slash tires in the dark. They were panicking, and panic made mistakes, mistakes that created openings. Naomi touched her scalp again, then turned away from the wreck. Inside the courthouse, Jordan worked late reviewing transcripts when his phone buzzed. The name Elena Cruz flashed. He answered, hearing her rapid breathing. "Jordan," Elena whispered, trembling. "I need to see you now. Please. It's about what happened to Judge Hayes." He tried to slow her down. "Not on the phone," she insisted. "Parking garage, level B2. Hurry!" Jordan found Elena pacing between concrete pillars. Her uniform was wrinkled, hands shaking uncontrollably. She ran to him. "I can't hold it anymore," she said, glancing around. "They know I have it. They're watching me." Elena pulled a small black USB drive from her purse. "I was there in the security office," she whispered, voice breaking. "I recorded everything they did to Judge Hayes. The whole assault." Jordan's eyes widened. She nodded fast. "I transferred it here," Elena said. "But this morning Chief Judge Philip Whitman called me in. Cold. Different. He asked if I witnessed anything unusual. He said it'd be best if I forgot what I saw." Jordan slipped the drive into his inner jacket pocket. "Did you tell him?" "No," Elena said, terrified. "But he knows. Someone saw me. The camera monitor officer got reassigned. My supervisor warned me, some things stay buried." "Yet we'll protect you," Jordan promised. Elena grabbed his arm, panic sharp. "You don't understand. Whitman isn't just covering for them. He's protecting something bigger. Promise you'll keep it safe and don't let them know I gave it to you." "I promise," Jordan said. "Go home. Act normal." He watched her hurry away, footsteps echoing. As soon as she disappeared, he called Naomi. Less than 3 hours later, Naomi called him back, voice tight with controlled fury. "They fired her," Naomi said. "Elena called me crying. Escorted out, accused of violating protocols. The official evidence copy is gone. Technical transfer error. Chain of custody paperwork vanished, too." Jordan's hand tightened around his phone. Naomi's voice hardened. "Jordan, where are you?" "Almost at Chambers. The drive hasn't left me." "Good," Naomi said. "Hurry." When he arrived, Naomi stood at the window, city lights reflecting off the glass, bare scalp visible in her reflection. "I saw Whitman leaving earlier," Naomi said, without turning. "He was smiling after ruining that woman's career." Jordan placed the USB drive on her desk. "He's getting sloppy," he offered. Naomi shook her head. "No, he's confident." "This is how he operates," Naomi continued. "Through proxies, quiet threats, sudden job losses. The perfect bureaucrat, no fingerprints, only ruin." She turned the drive in her hands. "You know what this means. He didn't just know, he approved it." Jordan's voice dropped. "But why target you so openly?" Naomi opened her drawer, revealing a concealed safe. "Because I was getting close," she said. "Those cases vanishing, brutality complaints dismissed under his watch. He's protected dirty cops for years." The safe clicked open. Naomi placed the drive inside with careful precision. "Elena risked everything," she said quietly. "We won't waste her sacrifice." She locked it away, spine straight, eyes fixed on what came next, because truth was finally surfacing. In the hush of Chambers, Naomi's whisper landed like iron, "Not this time." Jordan watched her posture, steady, unbroken. Humiliation, threats, missing evidence, none of it bent her. Each strike only sharpened her resolve. City lights threw long shadows across the glass. Somewhere upstairs, Chief Judge Bernard Mercer likely sat believing he'd won again. He didn't grasp what he faced. This wasn't one judge's pride. It was justice, and Naomi had guarded it for 22 years. Morning light filtered through Mercer's tall windows as Naomi entered his office. He stood behind mahogany, the polished bureaucrat in pressed robes. His smile was practiced, sterile. "Judge Hayes," he said, gesturing. Naomi stayed standing. "Let's keep it brief, Chief," she said. Mercer adjusted his tie, an old nervous tell. "As you wish. Concerns exist about your continued role in the Grady-Klein case." Naomi's voice stayed smooth. "Concerns? From whom?" "Several parties," Mercer replied, circling slowly. "Defense argues potential bias. The union threatens complaints. Even colleagues feel the situation is problematic." Naomi's eyes didn't blink. "You mean my assault is inconvenient?" Mercer flinched at the word. "That unfortunate incident is precisely why recusal is advisable. Appearance of conflict." Naomi cut in. "There is no conflict. I'm fully capable of impartiality. Don't insult my oath." Mercer's tone softened, falsely intimate. "No one doubts your abilities, Naomi. But the court's dignity, media scrutiny." Her laugh was sharp, humorless. "Where was your dignity when officers dragged me back and shaved my head?" Mercer's facade cracked. "That matter is being reviewed internally." Naomi stepped closer. "By whom? The same machine that buried Deputy Jennings's complaints for decades?" Mercer's gaze narrowed. "Those matters followed protocol." "Protocol?" Naomi placed both hands on his desk. "I've seen the files. Every complaint against Jennings, stamped Dismissed. With your signature. Color drained from Mercer's face. You weren't authorized to access those records. I'm a federal judge investigating civil rights violations, Naomi replied, quiet and lethal. I have authority. Like I have authority to question why our DA shields corrupt officers instead of prosecuting them. Mercer stiffened. DA Kenneth Dalton is elected. He has a difficult job. Naomi's voice dropped lower. Dalton is a coward who takes cues from you. The real question is, who gives you your orders? Mercer's mask fell. You're treading dangerous ground. Naomi straightened, unshaken. No, I'm finally standing on solid ground. You want recusal? Denied. This isn't a motion yet, but you'll make it one. Naomi moved for the door. After you called Dalton, after you meet union reps and promise more buried complaints for their loyalty. Mercer called after her. You're risking everything. Career, reputation. She paused. My integrity isn't negotiable. Her heels clicked down marble halls back to chambers, expression composed, while anger churned beneath. Each exchange with Mercer revealed deeper rot. Jordan waited inside, sorting files. He looked up. How bad? Naomi exhaled. Worse. Naomi sank into her chair. Mercer isn't just covering for individual cops. He maintains the entire system. Harassment complaints, brutality cases, civil rights violations. Everything funnels through him. Jordan spread documents. What's his angle? Power, Naomi said, tapping a folder. Leverage. Every buried complaint becomes a debt. Every dismissed case becomes a favor owed. She flipped a page. Another dismissal. Mercer's signature flowing like inked poison. And Dalton's in it. The DA's office doesn't move without Mercer's blessing, Naomi added. They coordinate who gets protected, what gets buried. Jordan's voice turned grim. A judge and a DA obstructing justice like partners. Naomi shut the file. It's worse. No, she said, standing at the window. The system itself is the cancer. Mercer and Dalton are symptoms. Protesters still gathered on courthouse steps daily. Naomi turned back, eyes hard. Mercer didn't stumble into corruption. He perfected it. Jordan gathered papers carefully. So what do we do? Naomi watched young lawyers hurry up the steps, faces still idealistic. How many would learn to look away? She answered quietly. We do the job. Follow law, protect the innocent, expose truth. Morning headlines hit like a tidal wave. Naomi sat at her kitchen table, coffee cooling as Chiron after Chiron scrolled. Federal judge accused of assaulting officers. A cropped security photo showed Naomi's raised hand, everything else edited out. Messages flooded in. Judges, reporters, old classmates. Some offered concern. Others took sides. A colleague texted, maybe step back, let things cool. Naomi switched off the radio when a host snarled about unstable activist judges. Her hand stayed steady, but anger burned. The coordination was obvious. Mercer's fingerprints without touching anything. Her phone rang. Jordan's voice came tight. Judge, turn on Channel 4. Naomi flipped channels, eyes sharpening. Crowds swarmed outside the courthouse. Signs screamed, resign now. Support our police. Jordan spoke fast. They're bussing them in. Union organizers, off-duty officers, paid protesters, and our supporters are kept across the street for security. Naomi watched a bullhorn leader whip the crowd into chants. Any word from Ethan? She asked. Silence. Jordan's voice cracked. That's why I called. Detective Ethan Price was attacked last night. He's in ICU at Memorial. The room tilted. How bad? Naomi demanded, already grabbing keys. Found in his driveway. Fractures, internal bleeding, Jordan said. Professional. They hurt him without killing him. Naomi's jaw clenched. I'm going. Now! Jordan warned. Reporters are camped outside your house. Naomi checked the peephole. News vans lining her quiet street. She muttered, "Back door it is," slipping out unseen, keeping her cap low over her shaved scalp. 20 minutes later, she entered Memorial through a service entrance. An ICU nurse recognized her, nodded, and let her in. Naomi stopped cold. Ethan lay battered, face purple, tubes everywhere, monitors beeping like a grim metronome. He'll live, the nurse said softly, but recovery will take months. Naomi pulled a chair close. She could see the method. Bones broken, life spared, not random violence. A message written in pain and precision. Ethan's eyes fluttered open. "Judge Hayes," he rasped. "I'm here," Naomi said, taking his least damaged hand. "Don't talk." He swallowed, wincing. They wanted the files. Naomi's focus tightened. "What? Files?" "Records in my safe," Ethan whispered. "Years, payoffs, cover-ups, threatened witnesses. I didn't give them up." Naomi's grip tightened. "You should have." Ethan's gaze flared despite injuries. "No, those files prove everything." "They lead back to Mercer and Dalton," Ethan said, voice fading as medication pulled him under. Naomi leaned closer. "Where are they?" Ethan shook his head slightly. "Not yet. Too risky. Wait for the right moment." His eyelids grew heavy. Naomi stayed another hour, watching each breath, each beep. When she finally left, dusk settled. She took a winding route home, checking mirrors for tails, refusing to gift fear the satisfaction of ease. In her garage, darkness pooled. Reporters mostly dispersed. Only a few diehards remained. Naomi reached for her front door and froze. A white envelope was taped at eye level, too deliberate to ignore, too clean to be random. Inside was a single photo. Ethan unconscious in his driveway, blood pooling beneath him. On the back, block letters read, "Next time we won't stop." Naomi's hands didn't shake. She slid the photo into an evidence bag, calm, clinical. They wanted fear. They wanted her to recuse, retreat, let rot flourish. But holding proof of escalation, Naomi felt something harder than fear. Certainty forged since clippers buzzed against her scalp. She would not bend. Not now. The courthouse loomed next morning like a fortress under siege. Protesters packed the steps, signs bobbing like angry waves. Barriers funneled people into narrow lanes. Competing chants collided. Justice for cops versus stand with Judge Hayes. News vans lined the street. Satellite dishes raised like metallic trees. Jordan met her at the service entrance, worry in his eyes. "It's intense." Naomi touched the smooth skin where hair used to be. "We've handled worse," she said, though both knew this was different. Tension crackled as they crossed the loading dock. Security guards watched, faces neutral, trust eroded. Then a commotion. Men in dark suits moved briskly through the corridor. FBI badges flashed under fluorescent light like cold sparks. "Yeah, federal investigators," Jordan whispered. "They arrived 20 minutes ago." The lead agent, a stern woman with silver hair, spotted Naomi and changed course. "Judge Hayes, I'm Special Agent Diana Chen. We need to talk, now." In Naomi's office, Chen didn't waste time. "We opened a formal investigation into systemic corruption in this courthouse. The attack on Detective Price triggered federal escalation." Jordan muttered, "About time." Chen's eyes narrowed, but she continued, "We're focused on Chief Judge Mercer's role in suppressing evidence and DA Dalton's office assisting cover-ups." Naomi nodded. "I have documentation," and witnesses. Chen's voice lowered. Pressure is intense to shut this down. Powerful people want it buried. Naomi's reply was still as stone. They always do. I won't be intimidated. A knock interrupted. Court officer at the door. Judge, they're ready. Naomi rose, robes settling like armor, anger quiet and sharpened into purpose. The main courtroom was packed. Grady and Klein sat with attorneys. Arrogance dimmed, but alive. The gallery buzzed like a live wire. As Naomi approached the bench, Mercer intercepted her, smile tight. A word, Naomi, he murmured. In open court, Chief, she answered. Mercer's voice dropped anyway. This has gone far enough. Recuse now, or face a formal review of your fitness. Naomi's eyes held him. Is that a threat? Mercer exhaled. A warning. Think legacy. I am, Naomi said, stepping past. That's why I'm seeing it through. Silence swept the room as she took the bench. Protest chants filtered through thick walls like distant thunder. Jordan slipped her a note. Hands steady, eyes bright. The note read, security footage recovered from 3 news sources. They can't bury it all. Naomi allowed a small, dangerous smile. Truth was water. It found cracks. They could build dams of lies, but pressure always won. She lifted her gavel, weight familiar, grounding. Protest signs were visible through windows, hate and support competing outside. Inside, only facts mattered. Naomi's voice carried cleanly. Court is now in session. Grady and Klein shifted uneasily. Their new union-paid attorney forced confidence while shuffling papers. From the bench, Naomi saw Agent Chen and her team settle into the gallery, notebooks ready. Mercer stood at the back, face darkening, storm clouds gathering but powerless to stop the rain. Naomi's mind flashed to clippers buzzing, to laughter in fluorescent cruelty. They tried to strip dignity. Instead, they exposed strength. Jordan leaned close, whispering, they can smear you, but truth is stronger. Naomi's fingers found her robe's rough texture. The robe felt heavier than cloth, responsibility, history, a promise. Outside, chants blurred into background noise. Here, the record would speak. Naomi looked down at the defendants, seeing the first real hints of fear of evidence, not of her. The courthouse at night felt different. Hallways empty, shadows long, every footstep echoing like a secret. Naomi sat alone in chambers, desk lamp warm against stacks of files. Threat letters lay neatly cataloged, each one logged, each one documented. She traced her scalp unconsciously, habit born from injury and resolve. A soft knock came. Night guard Evan Briggs, late 50s with tired eyes, stood at her doorway. Sorry, Judge. This was dropped at security. Urgent. He held a plain manila envelope. Naomi checked her watch. 11:23 p.m. Young woman in a hoodie, Evan added. Wouldn't give a name. He set it down. Want me to stay while you open it? Naomi shook her head. Thank you. After he left, Naomi studied the envelope. No return address, just her name typed. She'd learned caution, but instinct said this wasn't a threat. With a letter opener, she slid it carefully. A small flash drive tumbled out with a handwritten note. The note read, Judge Hayes, I'm sorry I ran. They threatened my family. The footage is here, unedited, time-stamped. Use it wisely. Naomi's pulse kicked. It was from Elena Cruz, the clerk who'd risked everything before. The drive felt heavier than plastic should. Naomi plugged it into her laptop. One video file appeared, dated the assault morning. Her cursor hovered. Reliving it would hurt, but avoiding it would be surrender. She hit play. The security angle showed Naomi at the metal detector, Deputy Jennings' smirk sharp as a blade. Audio was clear. Grady's voice mocked. Klein laughed. Naomi watched herself cuffed, posture intact, dignity held like a shield. The footage followed them toward the holding room. Doors, fluorescent glare, bodies blocking angles. Then Elena's phone video began, shot through a crack in the doorway. The shaving played in brutal clarity, clippers buzzing like insects. Grady grinned with cruelty. Klein pinned Naomi's shoulders too hard. Their laughter echoed off concrete. "Respect the badge," Grady snarled. "Smile," Klein taunted, snapping photos. Jennings watched, silent, complicit, damning in stillness. Naomi forced herself to watch every second. Her composure on screen was almost frightening. No begging, no collapse. The timestamps locked authenticity in place. Faces were clear, voices unmistakable. There was no spinning this into misunderstanding now. She paused on Grady's laughing face, studying it like evidence under glass. How many others had been humiliated, then silenced by fear? How many had learned the system wouldn't protect them? Naomi felt the weight of those unseen victims press closer. Using the drive would detonate the courthouse hierarchy. Mercer, Dalton, union power brokers, everyone who profited from buried truth. Naomi's career could become collateral. They'd call her biased, unstable, unfit. They'd try to bury her instead. But wasn't this why she became a judge? To make law mean something when power tried to rewrite it? Naomi opened her briefcase, touching worn leather, thinking of years of precedent. Tonight, it would carry something more explosive than arguments. Undeniable proof. The building creaked as it settled around her. Through the window, scattered protest signs still littered the steps, waiting for tomorrow's crowds. Naomi ejected the drive and held it to the light. Such a small object, such enormous gravity. Elena was out there, terrified, but brave. Now it was Naomi's turn to be brave publicly. She slid the drive into her inner pocket, then into her briefcase, layering security like habit. Tomorrow would change everything. Tonight, certainty filled her lungs. Naomi gathered files, straightened her desk, and watched her shadow on the wall. Head high, unbowed. They tried to shame her by shaving her scalp. Instead, they gave her armor, evidence that could not be argued away. The clock struck midnight as Naomi closed her briefcase, drive secured. Tomorrow's hearing loomed like a cliff edge, but she felt ready. Truth always found cracks. And now she would widen them until the rotten sides spilled into daylight. The next morning, the courthouse buzzed. Every seat in the gallery was filled. Reporters shoulder to shoulder with activists, citizens, lawyers. Camera crews lined the back wall, lenses trained on the bench. Outside, crowds pressed barricades, chants muffled but relentless. Grady and Klein sat at defense, swagger replaced by nervous glances. Their attorney shuffled papers like a man trying to outrun fire. The prosecution table looked thinner. D.A. Dalton had suddenly called in sick, his absence loud as a siren. Naomi entered, robe flowing, scalp gleaming under harsh lights. Every eye latched onto her head, but she didn't flinch. She took her seat and arranged files with practiced precision. The bailiff called court to order. Silence fell like a curtain. Before testimony, Naomi said, the court has new evidence to enter into the record. She opened a thick folder and set it squarely before her. The defense attorney sprang up. Objection! Personnel files are protected. Naomi didn't blink. Overruled! These records were illegally sealed to conceal a pattern of misconduct, Naomi continued. The public has a right to know. She began reading dates, incidents, victims, each line a buried voice dragged into light. Reporters typed furiously. Cameras clicked nonstop. She detailed profiling, excessive force, abuse of authority, complaint after complaint dismissed, filed away, erased. Each entry had a signature trail. Naomi's gaze lifted briefly to the gallery, then to Mercer's shadowed presence, letting him feel the record tighten. Her voice grew harder. April 22, 2023. Deputy Jennings assisted officers Grady and Klein in illegally detaining and assaulting a federal judge. She paused, eyes locking on the defense table. That judge was me. The room exhaled in shock. Naomi pressed a button. Screens mounted on courtroom walls flickered to life. The court will now view footage from that day. The video began, clear, time-stamped, unedited. The gallery watched in horror as cuffing, dragging, and cruelty unfolded without mercy. Gasps rippled at the sound of Grady and Klein laughing. Voices preserved like fingerprints. Jurors covered mouths. Some spectators cried. Grady jerked up, rage blazing. "This is garbage!" Naomi's gavel cracked. "Sit down, Officer Grady." Klein rose too, panic cracking his mask. "We had cause. She was suspicious." Naomi's voice cut through them. "Control yourselves or you will be removed." She looked down, calm and terrifying. "Your job was to protect justice. You chose abuse." Naomi's tone sharpened with controlled fury. "You humiliated a person you were sworn to protect, believing your badges would shield you." The defense attorney lunged for one last move. "You must recuse yourself. This proves personal involvement." Naomi didn't even glance at him. "It proves assault." "Counsel," she continued, "this evidence shows extraordinary lengths your clients took to violate rights. It does not disqualify me. It condemns them." A commotion stirred at the back. A team in suits entered, credentials visible. Federal presence filled the room like cold air. A tall woman stepped forward. "Your Honor, I'm Special Agent Natalie Serrano, DOJ Civil Rights. We're taking custody of all courthouse records connected to this case and related misconduct." Panic flashed across the defense table like lightning. Serrano continued, voice firm. "This represents a pattern of systemic violations. We will investigate the courthouse, police department, and DA's office." Naomi nodded once, solemn. "This court will cooperate fully," she said, letting the words land like a verdict on the building itself. Naomi addressed the gallery. "This is no longer one incident or one judge. It is a system that failed its people." Agents began collecting files efficiently, the sound of folders opening and closing like doors finally unlocking. Reporters rushed out, phones to ears, story exploding nationwide. Grady and Klein sat deflated, bravado dissolving into dread. Their cruelty now lived on screens beyond their control. The gallery buzzed with the sense of history moving in a real time. Naomi stayed upright, watching the machinery of protection finally turn against itself. "They tried to shame me," she thought, fingers brushing her robe. "Instead, they armed me." The record was no longer theirs to edit. Outside, chants continued, but inside, truth had a microphone. And it wasn't asking permission anymore. The courtroom was even more crowded on sentencing day. Morning sunlight poured through high windows, painting long shadows across the floor. Grady and Klein sat in orange jumpsuits, shackles clinking, shoulders slumped under guilty verdicts they couldn't outrun. Deputy Jennings sat separately with counsel, face ashen after accepting a plea deal. Chief Judge Mercer's seat was conspicuously empty, now processed across town under federal indictment. News had shown agents escorting him from his home, cuffs gleaming. DA Kenneth Dalton's resignation letter dominated headlines, his careful phrasing unable to hide scandal. His office was being emptied, boxes, seized files, federal seals. Naomi entered, robe settling. Her hair began regrowing in patches, but she kept it shaved, symbol, reminder, evidence. "All rise," the bailiff called. Naomi took the bench, gaze steady. "Be seated. We're here for sentencing in 3 related matters." She lifted the first file. Deputy Wade Jennings. Jennings stood shakily, attorney steadying his elbow. "You pleaded guilty to conspiracy against rights, abuse of authority, obstruction," Naomi said. "Your agreement acknowledges dozens of civil rights violations across years." Jennings's voice cracked with rehearsed remorse. Naomi's reply was calm. "Indeed." "Based on cooperation and plea," Naomi continued, "this court sentences you to 8 years federal custody, followed by supervised release. You are permanently barred from law enforcement or security work." Jennings nodded numbly, sitting like a man hollowed out. "Officers Tyler Grady and Mason Klein," Naomi said. They stood, chains clinking. "The jury found them guilty on all counts: civil rights violations, assault on a federal judge, abuse of authority, false reports, and intimidation." Naomi faced Grady first. "Throughout trial, you showed no remorse. You insisted cruelty was justified even when confronted with clear evidence." Grady's jaw tightened. She turned to Klein. "You hid behind calm words while encouraging escalation and recording humiliation." "Your actions reflect the worst abuse of police power," Naomi said, voice carrying. "You targeted people by race and vulnerability, fabricated charges, used violence as control." She lifted a report. "The record shows repeated complaints, buried by a corrupt system." Several complainants sat present, finally watching accountability arrive. Naomi's tone sharpened. "Tyler Grady, 12 years in federal prison, followed by supervised release." She turned. "Mason Klein, 15 years in federal prison, followed by supervised release." Their attorney rose, protesting, but Naomi continued over him. "These sentences reflect not only what you did to me, but your long pattern of terrorizing this community." She looked across faces, victims, families, advocates, people who learned silence was safer until now. "You betrayed your badges and your oaths," Naomi said. The room held its breath. She watched Grady and Klein absorb the words like blows they couldn't block. For once, authority wasn't shielding them, it was weighing them down. Naomi lifted her gaze to the gallery. "Let today send a message. The law is not a costume for the powerful, no badge, no robe, no office grants, immunity." Applause erupted. Even the bailiff didn't rush to silence it. The sound felt earned. "One final order," Naomi continued when quiet returned. "All sealed files previously locked under Mercer's authority will be reviewed by an independent commission." The words traveled fast through cameras, phones, hallways, like oxygen entering a sealed room. Grady and Klein were led away in chains, shuffling where swagger used to live. Jennings followed, head bowed. The click of handcuffs echoed. An ending and a beginning. Lawyers embraced clients. Some cried. Reporters sprinted, hungry for the next breaking detail. Naomi remained seated, watching the room shift. She thought of clippers buzzing, hair falling, laughter bouncing off concrete. They tried to break her. Instead, they sparked a reckoning that cracked the courthouse open like an old shell. The federal investigation expanded daily into precincts, internal affairs units, union finances, and courthouse administration. Mercer's indictment pried decades of sealed records loose. Dalton's resignation was only the first domino in a chain that stretched far beyond one building. Weeks later, the courthouse halls felt altered. New security protocols, civilian oversight desks, transparent reporting stations. But the real change was emotional. Fear no longer owned the air. Staff walked with straighter backs. Whispers turned into conversations, and conversations into statements. Naomi crossed transformed corridors, her footsteps echoing on marble. A young public defender smiled and murmured, "Thank you." New security officers carried professionalism instead of swagger. Accountability had replaced intimidation as the unofficial language of the building. Through glass walls, Naomi saw mandatory training sessions, bias awareness, de-escalation, evidence handling. Down the hall, oversight board members reviewed complaint files in a new office that used to be a storage closet. The symbolism wasn't subtle. Public audit reports were posted in the lobby, use of force numbers, complaint outcomes, response timelines. Jordan hurried up with a tablet. "Judge, have you seen the news?" Naomi didn't need to. The building practically hummed with it. A statement from the president's office announced Naomi's nomination as chief judge of the district, praising her refusal to bend under corruption. Networks repeated it endlessly. "Senate committee is fast-tracking hearings," Jordan said. Naomi touched her scalp thoughtfully. "The title isn't the point," Naomi replied. "It's what we do with it." In her chambers, community leaders waited, faces once hardened by disappointment, now lit by cautious hope. Their presence felt like a chorus, finally given a microphone. Reverend Malcolm Rivers, who'd organized peaceful protest, shook her hand. "You turned personal humiliation into structural change," he said. Dr. Marisol Vega, head of a civil rights coalition, nodded. Oversight boards are already cutting complaint delays dramatically. Professor Lillian Park from the law school added, "Other districts are adopting these reforms. They're calling it the Hayes Standard: civilian review, transparent audits, mandatory training, protected whistleblowing." Naomi listened, absorbing the hope like responsibility, not praise. "The real work starts now," Naomi said. "We must make these changes permanent, able to survive any one person, any one administration." After the meeting, she stood alone, afternoon sun warming her chambers, and looked into the mirror. Her hand moved to her head with intention. The bald scalp, once meant to shame her, had transformed into symbol. Some women in the community shaved in solidarity. Young attorneys wore their hair cropped close as a quiet refusal to be intimidated. Naomi kept shaving her own scalp smooth, not hiding regrowth, but maintaining the beacon. On her desk lay stacks of reform proposals, training protocols, accountability measures. The workload was enormous, but for the first time in years, change felt real, tangible, enforceable. A knock interrupted her reflection. Elena Cruz entered, reinstated with back pay, and promoted to oversight coordinator. Her eyes were steadier now. "Judge Hayes, the afternoon session is ready?" Naomi nodded, slipping into her robe, weight settling differently. The walk to the courtroom was lined with new faces. Clerks hired for integrity, veteran staff who found courage, community representatives given formal voice. At the doors, Jordan handed the docket. "Ready, Your Honor?" Naomi's answer was simple. "Always." The gallery was full, but the atmosphere had changed. Faces carried purpose rather than fear. Public defenders sat straighter beside clients. Officers stood respectfully, training visible in posture and restraint. Civilian observers took notes openly. Oversight no longer whispered. "All rise," the bailiff called. Naomi took the bench and surveyed the room. She saw familiar supporters and new petitioners, people who once assumed the system would crush them. Now they came believing they might actually be heard. Sunlight streamed through high windows, striking the polished gavel. Naomi lifted it, feeling not just authority, but obligation. She brought it down, sound echoing cleanly. The chamber settled. Order wasn't maintained through fear now, but through legitimacy. Cases would be heard, rights would be protected, accountability would be routine instead of rare. Naomi's robe felt like armor, not costume. She looked forward, not back, knowing the cost, but also knowing the truth had finally found its day. She met the room with steady eyes. "Court is in session," she announced. And for the first time in a long time, the words didn't feel like performance. They felt like promise, real justice, real record, no more buried voices. Dignity they couldn't take. If you are in your late 60s or 70s, you've lived long enough to know that power doesn't always respect age, rank, or even the robe of a federal judge. Judge Naomi Hayes walked into that courthouse the way many of us have walked into hospitals, banks, or government offices, expecting at least basic respect. Instead, she was treated like a nobody, dragged, mocked, and shaved, as if her very identity could be stripped away with a buzzing pair of clippers. For older Black Americans and for anyone who remembers segregation and routine humiliation, her story rings painfully familiar. Yet what stands out is not just the cruelty, but her response. Naomi did not beg, scream, or collapse. She watched, remembered, and turned her own suffering into evidence. The lesson for those of us with gray hair and long memories is this: dignity is not what people grant you. It is what you refuse to surrender, even when they try to turn you into an object of ridicule. Courage is contagious. Those of us who have lived a long time know that one brave person can spark a crowd, but they cannot clean up a rotten system alone. Naomi's stand would have gone nowhere if others hadn't found their own courage. A nervous clerk protected a USB drive instead of destroying it. Detective Ethan Price risked his career and nearly his life to testify about years of planted evidence and buried complaints. Elena Cruz, a young security worker, filmed what others pretended not to see. Older viewers may remember neighbors who hid behind curtains when trouble came. In Naomi's story, people stepped out of the shadows. Their courage did not erase her pain, but it kept her from standing alone. The lesson here is simple and powerful. At any age, your decision to tell the truth can give someone else the strength to follow. Real change outlasts headlines. If you are over 65, you have watched scandals come and go on the evening news. A big story breaks, a few people resign, and then everything slowly slides back to normal. Naomi's case was different because she refused to settle for a few bad apples being hauled away in handcuffs. She pushed until the whole barrel was inspected. Corrupt officers went to federal prison, yes, but the reforms went further. Sealed files were opened. Community oversight boards were created. Training changed. Data was made public instead of hidden in dusty drawers. Residents who once walked into that courthouse with their shoulders tight now entered with a little more trust. For older Americans thinking about the world their grandchildren will inherit, Naomi's fight offers a hard but hopeful lesson. Justice is not a single verdict. It is steady work, done in the open by people who refuse to let yesterday's abuse become tomorrow's routine. Friends, after walking through Judge Naomi Hayes' journey from humiliation in a back room to real reform in the courtroom, I'd love to hear from you. If you're 65 or older, how does her story connect with what you've seen in your own lifetime, from the civil rights era to today's headlines? Do you believe our justice system can truly change, or are we just patching cracks in a broken wall? Please share your thoughts in the comments, tap like, and subscribe to this channel so we can keep learning, reflecting, and standing up for justice together.